بفرمایید خوش آمد بگیم به آقای کاوه شهروز. معرفی کوتاهی از ایشون میکنم. ایشون یکی از اعضای جدید بورد هستند و چون از بنده خواستن به انگلیسی ایشون رو معرفی کنم. Mr. Kaveh Shahrooz is a lawyer based in Toronto. His current work focuses on corporate compliance with international human rights standards. He previously practiced a transactional lawyer at one of the law firms in New York. He also previously served as a senior advisor to Canada's Department of Foreign Affairs and International Trade, where his work focused on Canada's role at the UN Human Rights Council. Mr. Kaveh has a BA from the University of Toronto and a law degree from Harvard Law School, where he served as an editor-in-chief of the Harvard Human Rights Journal. His writing on human rights, in particular with respect to Iran's political prisoners, has been published in the Harvard Human Rights Journal and the BBC. May I ask you please to join us.
دوستان با عرض سلام، من کاوه شهروز هستم. به یکی که شما خوش آمد میگم و تشکر میکنم از دوستانی که زحمت کشیدن برای برنامه امروز. به من گفتن که میتونم انگلیسی یا فارسی صحبت کنم. با اجازه شما من انگلیسی صحبت میکنم و من اگه سوالی بود من خوشم شما فارسی شما. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Kaveh Shahrooz. Thank you all very, very much for coming, and thank you very much to the organizers. I will try to be relatively brief because the evening really belongs to two other individuals, Mr. Hossein Raeissi and our guest from the US, Ms. Gissou, both of whom deal with the important day-to-day work of the Iran Human Rights Documentation Center. In particular, I want to give a cold, Toronto welcome to Gissou. Thank you so much for coming and visiting our fair city. I promise you we're normally better than this. I have the honor and the privilege of being a member, the newest member if I'm not mistaken, of the board of directors of the Iran Human Rights Documentation Center. And let me tell you why I say it's such an honor and such a privilege to be a member of the board of directors of this organization. First of all, it's a board comprised of truly stellar individuals in whose company I have no business being. It's made up of well-known professors and academics in some of the best institutions in the world, some very well-known journalists and lawyers and writers and so on. So it's really a personal honor just to be included in that group. We have the pleasure of working with some fantastic people, including Ms. Nian. Other than that, though, the IHRDC, the Iran Human Rights Documentation Center, is an organization that I've known and whose work I've closely followed and whose projects I've occasionally contributed to for many, many years. And the reason for that is it's one of those rare organizations operating in the context of Iran that really approaches the issue of human rights in Iran in absolutely the right way. Regrettably, the culture of human rights has been absent in Iran for far too long. Now, it goes without saying that the Iranian government violates human rights, and that's a point I'll come back to. But when I say that the culture of human rights is missing, what I mean by that is actually something more broad. What I mean is that the attitude towards human rights among Iranians, among our intelligentsia, among our opposition groups, among our political class, has often been very, very selective. The view has traditionally been among the political class that we want human rights, we want free speech rights, we want due process rights, we want economic rights and social rights, and we want the whole gamut of rights, but we want them for people that look like us, that think like us, that share our religion, that share our ethnicity, that share our gender, that share our sexual orientation. The problem with that way of thinking, naturally, is that it ignores the fundamental philosophical underpinnings of international human rights law. It ignores the fact that human rights law doesn't make these kinds of distinctions, and it very easily leads to the replication of dictatorial structures, and it can very easily lead to further human rights abuses. And that, I think, is what sets the IHRDC apart, in my view. Because it approaches human rights in a way that is objective, dispassionate, and by dispassionate I don't mean apathetic, I mean just free of prejudices. It approaches it in a way that's credible, evidence-based, and non-partisan. And for that, I urge you to look at the IHRDC website when you get a chance at home tonight, and see the kind of reporting that this organization has done. What you're going to find are going to be impeccably researched reports with a great deal of witness statements, a great deal of source documents, and you're going to find top-notch legal analysis. And you're going to find a wide variety of topics covered. Reports, for example, on the Iranian regime's assassinations abroad, like the Mykonos massacre. Reports on the 1988 massacre of political prisoners. Reports on the attacks on bloggers and journalists. Reports about post-election violence in 2009, about the Islamic Republic's repression of Baha'is and the Kurds, about rape in Iranian prisons, about the attacks on the independence of lawyers and judges, reports about the execution of minors, and so on and so on. This is an organization that doesn't limit its research to one political group. It doesn't limit itself to one topic. It really focuses on the whole gamut of the Iranian public and all human rights. Where there have been violations and where accountability is called for, the IHRDC is there to report the facts. And I think it's this approach that ensures that the organization is viewed with tremendous credibility in policy circles. I spent some time working at Canada's Department of Foreign Affairs, and I can tell you with absolute certainty that the reports that the IHRDC produces are read by policymakers who are trying to devise policy on Iran. And in that capacity, I spent a great deal of time in Geneva at the UN Human Rights Council when there was a push to assign a special rapporteur to investigate Iran's human rights situation. And I can tell you with certainty, again, that IHRDC reports played an important role in that debate. Ladies and gentlemen, the work of the Iran Human Rights Documentation Center is more important than ever these days, and I'm going to outline 3 reasons why I think that is the case. It's not news to anyone in this room that the Iranian regime is returning to its darkest days with respect to human rights. I don't need to recite the bill of particulars here. I think you all know what the Iranian regime has been up to in recent years. And if perchance you don't know, then I urge you to read the latest report from Ahmed Shahid, the UN Special Rapporteur on the human rights situation in Iran. It makes for truly disturbing reading. He notes gruesome torture, execution of dissidents, both secret and in public, attacks on ethnic and religious minorities, attacks on bloggers and journalists, attacks on the very notion of justice and due process. The work of the IHRDC is essential because it lets Ahmed Shahid and the UN apparatus know about these violations. It lets ambassadors and diplomats and NGOs know about these crimes. The IHRDC lets the world know that these crimes are happening in Iran every day. There's another reason why I think the work of the IHRDC is important, and it has to do with accountability. Tyrants and dictators want nothing more than for the world to forget their victims and their crimes. That's how they can continue their tyranny. But I'm happy that the IHRDC is part of an increasing trend that says to the Iranian government that we will not forget your gross human rights violations. It says to the Iranian regime that we will collect evidence so that one day we can hold you to account for the crimes that you have committed. And it says to the world, and it says to the victims in a very loud voice, that we will not forget. Another example of this trend towards accountability, and I don't want to get sidetracked, but another example of this was the Iran tribunal that recently took place in London and at The Hague. It was an effort to demand accountability from the Iranian regime and provide victims of the crimes of the Iranian regime in the 1980s, and to provide them with a voice denied to them for almost 30 years. The IHRDC wasn't officially involved with the Iran tribunal, but many of those involved with the IHRDC, like myself, like Gissou, like Payam Akhavan, all worked on the tribunal as well. And I think the reason for that is that the notion of justice and accountability is really the bedrock of the IHRDC, and it's the way we approach human rights and our fundamental belief in human rights. And most importantly, I think the work of the IHRDC is important because it focuses attention on what matters most with respect to Iran, and that's the human rights issue. Turn on the news, and what you're going to hear about is the nuclear issue. What you're going to hear about is the threat that Iran may or may not pose to other countries. What is often missing in these discussions is the argument that the primary victims of the Islamic Republic of Iran are actually the Iranian people. There are policymakers out there who would like to believe that if tomorrow the Iranian government came to the table and decided to shut down its nuclear program and establish peace with Israel, that that would be the end of that. the IHRDC's work, in essence, is a counter-argument. The IHRDC constantly makes the argument that the nuclear file is not really the end of the discussion. The IHRDC's work is to constantly argue that what needs to be addressed is the human rights catastrophe that has unfolded in Iran over the past 3 decades. Gissou and Hossein Raeissi are going to tell you more about the work of the center, and I hope that you're pleased with what you hear in the reports that you read both here tonight that are distributed and the material that you read online. The message that I want to leave you with is that this organization needs your help, it needs your support. It's an organization that needs financial support, it needs your volunteer assistance, it needs you to promote it at every chance. By supporting this organization, by promoting it, you send a very clear message that human rights matter, that accountability matters, that the lives of Iranian people matter. Thank you very much.